Now I want to ask you a question. Help me. You said, okay, when white privilege is used, we can use it positively and blah. When it's thrown at me just as the accusation, you just awful, you whites, you terrible, you're never going to change, we need to cut the head off, blah, blah, blah. How do I manage that?
Well, it depends, because then when you want to find ways of dealing with it, is the person willing to even engage you, the person who's saying that to you? Or is that person just shouting? Is that person just shouting, not even hoping for a response? So you have to weigh those. If it's something that is just said in the political platforms. Now, politicians are not the most rational people. Over the years, even now, politicians are not up for logic. Politicians, they want to chant their rhetorics and they want to chant their slogans. So it's a pity. It's a pity, but then again, that is what we would say. Well, there was a time when a black man wasn't listened to. Was that right? That was not right. Is this right? So it's not right. So that's why we need conversations.
Yes.
That's why we need conversations, so that we can get people to be interested in talking and engaging each other instead of just shouting at each other. So I wouldn't say, I would think you don't want to be bothered by that. Don't let that overly bug you. When somebody is shouting, they are shouting because they don't want to engage.
Yeah.
And cowards do that. It's like casting stones. It's like throwing stones at people. You don't want to, throw punches and wait for punches to come. That's what boxing is all about. A fair match. So people who are unfair is
Okay,
not.
so
Yeah.
There's 3 states to any relationship. Children, parents with children, friends, family. There's 3 states that you can have in a relationship. Only 3. The one is cooperation. I always talk about the little birds on the tree in Jungle Book. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Oh, what do you want to do? And just cooperation. Now, that's not necessarily until one says, well, let's go to the beach. Oh, I don't feel like going to the beach. Let's go to the mall. All right, let's go to the mall. That's cooperation. That's kind of considering each other with respect. Okay? And you're in a place of peace. Then what happens is we get to places like where you and I are. We're bringing the dishes and there's a conflict. Now, it's not necessarily a fight. It can become one. And it's always better to pursue peace. But sometimes a confrontation or a conflict is required. And if the point is to pursue peace and get back here, it's constructive. Now, I want to take white privilege and take it there. There is a tension between the black and the white people with regard to white privilege, and we allowing this confrontation to happen with the mindset of getting back to cooperation. Many people don't want cooperation. They want the conflict in order to get control, to become dominant, to become the pharaoh and as the master and the slave. And a lot of people, and this is what often happens, we see it in the silent majority, is they avoid the confrontation because they are agreeable, and they rather give up the position to be controlled, and they think it's peace, but it's not. It's slavery. That's when often the accusation comes, to try and get a position of control. I'm going to dominate you, I'm going to get over you, and that's why people have stood back from the accusation. There's only one alternative, there's 2 alternatives to remain in that place. Is either you can remain in a position of control, which is terrible, it's tyranny. Apartheid had control over you, or there has to be a separation. And that's what happens in every single relationship. When I'm confronted with somebody who wants to get into the conflict, not to resolve, but to get control, how do I manage that?
Somebody wanting to control you.
Control white people, control me in the argument, win the argument, not...
Okay, are you talking about government, or are you talking about society?
Society is not as threatening as government. So it's in the media. Most of the arguments that come in terms of the accusations is to get control over the white people, is what we feel.
But government controls everybody, not just white people.
Sure.
But maybe it's because the government is black. That's why you feel like it's targeting you as a white person.
Yes, in a certain way, maybe it's because the government's black. And I realize that the easiest target on the South African area of South Africa is the white person, because we're the ones who've caused the most trouble in the last 100 years or so. And the rhetoric is drive them to the sea, get them out, cut off their heads, kill the poor. So we feel threatened that our lives are at stake. And a lot of we'll get there. That's a different one. When it's not about having the confrontation or the argument or the discussion in order to get back to cooperation, but it's about getting control. How do I manage that? How do we as white people manage that? I don't know if we can even answer that.
No, look, now we are talking about the government, right? Government controlling. The government controls everybody. The government doesn't just control white people. They don't just want to control white people. They control everybody. Look at what's
But we're talking
happening
about
now.
white privilege.
And white privilege. Like white privilege.
Let's get into that in the next session. We've got a few seconds left. I think in concluding this at the moment, one of the things you mentioned right now is the government's in control of everybody. And how do we deal with that? The only way to take it out of the government's hands is to deal with each other and determine what we want instead of allowing them to dictate to us their agenda.
Social power.
Social power. Socialism. Woo! Okay, another topic that we're coming on to. I think if we can safely say as white people that we have got privilege and we do enjoy that privilege, let's not abuse it and be sensitive that 80% of South Africa has never ever had what we've got. My name is Dean Haystack and I'm just a guy who gives a damn.
My name is Apiwe, the other side of the story.